Welcome, everybody. Um, Glad that you guys are able to make it. I know it's a very tricky times, and definitely I know that a lot of you guys aren't on a schedule. I don't know if you guys are feeling the same way, but I feel like this year has started like within a bullet train. I've been playing catch up since the year started. It's just so much going on and so much that we want to do, that it feels like it's overwhelming. And we're already done with February. It's just FYI. So, but it's a good month. It's a short month, but it's a good month. I'll take some pride on that one. But anyways, welcome to Unlock Higher Education. I'm glad to see you guys. I see some familiar faces, most of them familiar, actually. And so I'm glad that you guys are welcome, able to come back and join us. Today, we're going to have some great, exciting news, particularly with our guest speaker. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you guys what Unlock Higher Ed's purpose is a coalition of individuals with the same mindset to further access to higher education for those who are interested and those who are incarcerated and those who have been incarcerated in the past. For is basically for the student and the reaching out to those students, the resources and potential avenues and opportunities for them to increase their learning. And with that comes learning when it comes to equitable, when it comes to some wording there, but when it comes to a learning that is in lines with the value and the quality that is provided outside. So we want to make sure that they have access to quality education as well. And with that, I will bring it to our first activity, and it's usually a breakout room where we can have a few minutes to spend with each other and get to know the work that we're currently doing in our own respective places, and let them know where you're from, what your goals are for this year, and what you're working on to achieve those professional goals. Mickey will set us up on some breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. Anyways, talking about clinks and talking about working, and I want to just point out, I'll go first. I want to point out the great session that I had with the team that I was in. And I want to point out Elizabeth, who is currently in Thailand. So it's nighttime for her. So appreciate the fact that she has joined us. But I just want to, bring her up front and she can talk about what she's seen out there in Thailand, which I think is amazing, in the differences in cultures and how they see and view incarceration, but also some links that she can share with us for us to be able to participate virtually in that programming.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in Thailand for 2 conferences. The first one was the first ever women's correctional conference for the International Corrections and Prisons Association. I was there as a presenter to present research on end-of-life care for females, specifically in a healthcare model. 51 other countries showed up to that space. And so the conversation was really about how do we help women who are incarcerated across the board, and what best practices are happening around the world for women specifically, and how does that look? The second conference that started tonight is about smart prisons. So it's prison technology. And so I'm the correctional education manager for JSTOR. So I have my work cap on for this one, not my research cap on for this one. And they have decided that they're going to broadcast most of the workshops and conferences in live time. So I'm going to drop it in the links to all of the live feeds for those things, as well as the schedule. I will let you know that the schedule is in Bangkok time. So if you're on the East Coast, which most of you are, that means it's exactly 12 hours ahead of you. Easy. If you're anywhere else, you'll have to figure it out. I apologize. I cannot handle more time zones right now than I already am. If you have questions or want to know what a certain talk is more about, I will also include my email and I can just screenshot you the little blurb about that talk. They start tomorrow, and they go for the next 2 days. I don't know if they're being recorded or not, but they are live streamed. So it might be something that people are interested in knowing what the conversation is internationally about technology in prisons. Some of it is very hard to sit through because it's not about access to education. It's about how do we control and contain people. So I want to put that out there for some people. But often I feel like a spy in these spaces, and I'd rather know what the conversation is being had than not, so we can anticipate it and resist, or we can anticipate and pivot if need be. Some of them are about AI and how machine learning is working. I'm going to put it in the chat, and please feel free to share these links freely. They are open and available. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. It's interesting contrasts as well, in how we perceive criminal justice in different, countries. And anybody else want to share before we get started with our guest speaker? I'm super excited for that. One more? Want to share about the work that they're currently doing?
Let me jump in real quick. I've got FICGN is just releasing a new grant for formerly incarcerated individuals. It's called the REST grant. So if you know anyone that is needing to relocate for employment, needing to move locations for employment's sake, we have $10,000 available to help with that relocation costs. Please reach out to me, ttaylor@ficgn.org, for information and to get started on that. Thank you.
I am so happy to hear that it's finally come through, and that this vision that Terrell had in the group, it's finally established, and such a wonderful opportunity for people who are wanting to level up, and be able to obtain that equitable employment opportunity that they're seeking. So this is definitely one way to support the individuals, and it's a lot of times what hinders that growth. So thank you guys for envisioning that program and for giving that opportunity to people out there. All right. Well, as you can see in our agenda, we're moving on to our guest speaker today. I am super, super excited to introduce our dear colleague that's been with us for quite some time. I mean, I think she's been with us longer than I've been. So Ashton, in a way, you're kind of like the expert in some sense when it comes to our focus and our mission here. So thank you for sticking with us all these years. So Ashton Hoselton is our Director of Policy and Research at the Education Justice Project, a comprehensive college and prison program based at the University of Illinois Urbana campaign. Ashton is passionate about developing and implementing community-driven policies that expand access to higher education for currently and formerly incarcerated people. She has authored reports, research publications, and legislative language to this end. Ashton's current work focuses on the state of Illinois. She is an active member of the Freedom to Learn campaign and the Illinois Coalition for Higher Education in Prison. By fostering meaningful and strategic alliances with national, state, and local stakeholders to advance advocacy efforts led by the students and instructors directly involved with college and prison programs. Ashton and her comrades have successfully supported the creation of the Illinois Higher Education in Prison Task Force and the passage of a new law in Illinois that mandates statewide data collection related to higher education in prison. Ashton has a BA in neuropsychology and holistic healing from Pitzer College and a JD from Georgetown University Law Center. Ashton, I am so happy that you're here and that you are willing to, share your expertise with us.
Thank you, Judith, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here today. I've been able to learn so much from the other speakers in this series, and so I'm really honored to be invited to talk a little bit about our policy work in Illinois. So thank you to Unlock Higher Ed for having me, and thank you all for being here. I guess I should have known that Judith was going to read the bio that I sent, but that's really a short recap of what I was planning on talking about today. I will try to sort of cruise through my remarks and then would love to have more of a discussion with everyone. And I apologize with this blurred background and this shirt, it's having a little issue with my shoulder. That's maybe distracting. In any case, thank you again, Judith. As Judith mentioned, I'm the Policy and Research Director with the Education Justice Project, or EJP. 16 years ago, when EJP was getting started, we were the only academic post-secondary program in Illinois available to incarcerated students. And I'm really grateful that in the intervening years, much has changed. There are now 12 higher ed and prison programs in Illinois, engaging incarcerated students across 9 Illinois Department of Corrections facilities. Unfortunately, we have far more facilities than just 9. There are about 28 correctional centers and then a few additional reentry centers as well. So despite the marked increase in programs, the vast majority of incarcerated people still don't have access to higher ed in our state. A couple of quick numbers: 2/3 of incarcerated people in Illinois, or over 19,000 individuals, are held in facilities that don't offer any academic higher education. And where higher education and prison programs are offered, enrollment is limited by a number of factors. These can include physical space, program design, faculty capacity, Department of Corrections restrictions on participation and funding, to name a few of them. These things, unfortunately, might sound familiar to many of you that are involved in programs in other states. Within the existing programs, enrollment varies from 7 to 79, with an average enrollment of 38 students per program. And when you take into consideration students enrolled across those 12 programs, only 1.6% of the individuals incarcerated in Illinois state facilities are accessing higher ed in prison. I'd be really curious to talk with anyone else that might have access to similar enrollment information in their state. My team right now is looking to do a national survey to see where 1.6% ranks in terms of other states and national access. So these numbers make really clear that the need and opportunity for expansion are great, but effective expansion requires resource allocation, coordination and collaboration across stakeholders, and strong policy to support and sustain this expansion. EJP has sought to foster the necessary conditions for this work through the launch of our Policy and Research Division and our leadership of the Freedom to Learn campaign. The Freedom to Learn campaign is a statewide effort calling for clear and fair legislation that allows higher ed and prison programs in Illinois to flourish. We found, after years of trying to work to change Department of Correction policy, that can change very quickly with the change in administration. And so we have specifically focused on state level legislation as more of a permanent change to policy. The Freedom to Learn campaign first formed in 2019 in response to the Illinois Department of Corrections raiding an EJP library at the Danville Correctional Center. They removed over 200 books that had been previously approved to come into our library. And when we reviewed the books that were removed, it was clear that they were largely related to identity, race, social justice, seeing some of the same censorship that we're seeing in today's climate inside of the prison. And we understood that book removal as a sign of a growing practice of restricting reading materials in prison. and a symptom of a system that was not supporting higher education in prison. We also understood that EJP was not the only higher ed in prison program encountering these challenges. Unfortunately, the raid on our library was just one alarming example in our state, but more importantly, it became a galvanizing effort for coalition building that allowed us to start the Freedom to Learn campaign. And I'll try to juggle putting some links in the chat, and I'll catch up with questions and comments afterwards. The founding members of the campaign recognized that the book removal was also an opportunity to build awareness and shed light on other challenges that were impacting higher ed in prison in our state. And so we started contacting concerned community members, media outlets, and legislators to create awareness of the value of higher education in prison and some of the real consequences of the statewide challenges that we had identified. We were glad to see that the response was really swift and encouraging. Awareness and concern was growing, as was the conviction to do something about the challenges that we were sharing out. So after forming, we spent the first year and a half of the campaign compiling research and resources, organizing focus groups and strategic planning sessions, and refining the campaign's priorities. These priorities include 4 core freedoms. The first is the freedom to pursue higher education while in prison. We believe that higher ed in prison should be available at no cost to students, and that access should not be limited based on facility, length of sentence, or security level. The second was freedom to study without interference. Once enrolled, we believe students should have a right to continue participation and the ability to pursue higher education without undue interference as a result of transfers, lockdowns, and other avoidable disruptions. The third was freedom from censorship, thinking about how HEP programs could and should maintain authority over course subject matter, delivery, and evaluation. And the fourth was freedom to continue education upon release, making sure that formerly incarcerated scholars had access to clear and explicit pathways to continue upon returning to the community. When we presented these priorities to legislators, it became clear that we knew a lot about what was going on in other states, but we didn't have a great understanding of the landscape of higher education in prison in Illinois. And without this information, we found it was impossible to gain support for a legislative action plan that supports our 4 core freedoms. To address this challenge, we shifted our immediate focus to creating a statewide task force. That statewide task force would answer some of the questions we had, and maybe more importantly, bring together the stakeholders that would be necessary for putting those action steps into place. The bipartisan task force met from February through July of 2022. Task force members included state legislators, Department of Corrections officials, higher ed and prison instructors, formerly incarcerated individuals, and many others. The Freedom to Learn campaign was an active participant and supporter. FTL members were represented on the task force and in public comment. And we also encouraged public participation by maintaining a database to compile task force-related resources in a publicly accessible format, as well as organizing a public comments workshop to support others that were interested in providing testimony. In the end, the task force adopted 31 recommendations to propel Illinois to becoming a national exemplar in this field. I will say we are not quite there yet, but we did come up with a plan. The recommendations included things like regular data collection, assessments and reporting, increased access to technology, commitment of state and federal dollars, and much more. In line with the task force's charge to recommend a legislative action plan, there were 3 bills introduced in the subsequent legislative session. Together, these 3 bills sought to address several of the key challenges that constrained the work of the task force and the expansion of higher ed in prison in our state. These challenges were limited time, limited data, and limited funding. So first time, the task force was given just 6 months to meet, adopt recommendations, and submit a final report to the Governor and General Assembly. There was broad consensus among the task force members that this wasn't enough time and that it would be necessary to create an ongoing entity who could meaningfully implement the aforementioned recommendations and address some of the important open questions that the task force had identified. So in line with this consensus and the need for an additional entity to continue the work, a bill was introduced to establish a statewide commission. The bill was considered by the House Higher Education Committee, but did not advance to the House floor. And the primary challenge with that bill was bringing the relevant stakeholders into agreement regarding who should chair that commission. The Department of Corrections had really strong feelings about them chairing the commission, and supporters of the legislation felt strongly that higher ed in prison should have parity with higher ed on the outside, and that the Board of Higher Education was the appropriate entity to chair that commission. And so those negotiations are somewhat still in progress, though we have started a new General Assembly and legislative session at this point. The second challenge was data. At the time that the task force met, there was no one entity in our state that was collecting comprehensive state-level data on higher education in prison. And so there were many task force questions that went unanswered. The limited data available constrained what the task force could accomplish and informed several of the recommendations related to enhancing data collection in our state. In line with those recommendations, a bill was introduced to require 3 state agencies, the Department of Corrections, the Board of Higher Education, and the Community College Board, to collect and report on higher education in prison. And we were glad to see this bill passed with very overwhelming bipartisan support and went into effect on January 1st of 2024. We expect that the first reports will be made public later this year, and we hope to use that information to further advance some of the other legislative priorities that have arisen. Last and certainly not least is funding. Expansion of existing higher ed in prison programs and creation of new programs is limited by the lack of state funds to support and sustain these programs. The Illinois Higher Education Student Assistance Act, the current law in our state, does not allow incarcerated students to receive financial aid through state grant programs or gift assistance programs that other non-incarcerated students pursuing higher ed can. A third bill was introduced to remove this restriction and bring state law in line with federal law. The bill passed the House very quickly and with great support and gained several sponsors in the Senate, but did not pass during the 103rd General Assembly. We just started the 104th General Assembly earlier this year, and I'm glad to say that thanks to some dedicated legislative partners and committed advocates across our state and across our country, the bill was reintroduced earlier this month as HB 2466. As I look back on our policy work over the last 5 years, there are 4 suggestions that come to mind when thinking about others that might want to envision what similar efforts might look like in their state. And I wanted to share those with you this morning and hopefully foster some discussion. The first is the need to assess obstacles and opportunities. I invite you to consider what are some of the challenges to expanding higher ed in your state? What changes would be necessary to address those challenges? If you're not sure where to start, as we were at some points, I suggest looking at this Council of State Governments Laying the Groundwork report and related state fact sheets. The report identifies 4 fundamental building blocks that states should have in place to ensure that high-quality post-secondary education is readily accessible to currently and formerly incarcerated folks. The Freedom to Learn campaign and supporting legislators found this to be a really useful framework and a source that our legislators trusted. Another report that can be really helpful with this step is the recent Vera report on the first year of Pell restoration. Especially page 16, there's a chart that sort of compares states and can be a really useful resource when thinking about what unique obstacles and opportunities your state needs to tackle. My second suggestion is related to building relationships and breaking down silos. We spent a lot of time considering who might support our efforts or have aligned priorities at our university, in our legislature, in our state agencies, and at community-based organizations near us. So for us at EJP, that's meant building relationships with state and government relations personnel at the University of Illinois, as well as at the Illinois Board of Higher Education, the Illinois Community College Board, the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, and other state agencies that align with specific priorities. So for example, the Department of Innovation and Technology has been a really important partner when thinking about how to expand access to tech in Illinois prisons. Last, but certainly not least, it has also meant building relationships with other advocacy organizations that align with our goals and values. These include organizations and efforts that support higher ed policy reform, those that address incarceration and reentry, and those that support populations that are overrepresented in our criminal legal system. We've found that the opportunities for relationship building are really vast, and that we've had to get creative about where unexpected allies might be. The third suggestion that I want to amplify is the need to center students. Higher ed and prison programs serve students, and so we need to center those students in our policy work by finding ways to elevate their voices, experiences, and needs in service of tackling the obstacles that we identified. We can't effectively push for equitable resources, opportunities, and quality outcomes for our students if we're not consulting them in the process. In Illinois, we've been able to accomplish this by soliciting input directly from our students in our programs, through policy discussion groups and think tanks, and by seeking input from incarcerated folks generally. One powerful way that we've not only sought input, but brought together relevant stakeholders is by inviting legislators to visit these facilities and speak with the students inside them. I encourage all of you to consider potential avenues for inreach in your state and how you might center the voices of incarcerated students in your work. The fourth and final suggestion is don't stop when you win, or really better yet, plan to win before you win. Plan for how you will ensure that your win has the impact that you intend for it to have. Before passing a bill, it's imperative to consider implementation. Who will be involved? Can they prepare in advance? Are they willing to? And how can the coalitions, campaigns, and consortia in your state support implementation? Honestly, this can sometimes be the trickiest part of policy work, and we're seeing that play out a little bit in Illinois right now with the data collection bill. So that is the presentation I have for everyone today. I'm hoping we can open it up. I'll take a minute to review anything I should respond to in the chat. And really quickly while I do that, Beth, please go ahead.
Thanks, Ashton. This was really helpful. And of course, when do I not have a question? So I have a number, but I will keep this to like 2 at the moment. The first thing that I wanted to ask was, I loved all of the pieces that you laid out in terms of things to think about. I was a little bit surprised by the fact that one of them was not funding, which was great. And I got to thinking about what you were, what the challenge was in terms of finding a chair or people agreeing on a chair. Do you think, having gone through that, if there was a funder or funding mechanism that would have made a difference. Meaning if something that would have said, we're going to support your efforts, and as part of that, you know, we're requesting that this person or this position or a, you know, a neutral person serve as that chair.
That's a really interesting idea. And honestly, something that I don't think we considered. There weren't funders involved in the task force, and they weren't explicitly mentioned in the enumerated members of a potential commission. But I think that that was a missed opportunity. One of the ways that we have sought to continue the conversation without creating this new commission was our lieutenant governor hosted a convening earlier this month. And I know that funders were a key group of people that were invited to that convening, invited to engage. Especially given the current climate, I think that's something that we'll certainly consider in the future. It's interesting that there wasn't any concern around the cost of chairing the commission. If anything, there were multiple entities that were interested in chairing it and couldn't come to an agreement of what would be the right chair. But I do think funding is important, and it's, you know, one of the reasons that I think the task force was given such a short timeline.
Yeah, and that was also one of the things that I was thinking about, because it's virtually impossible to pull what you need to pull together in 6 months, because you hardly have a time to even analyze what it is you're, you know, the information, the data that you're receiving. So totally understood where you were coming from, but moving forward, it might be an option. Okay, my 2 other quick questions, and then I will just take a back seat. One is, I'd be interested in your thoughts on kind of where you see things now in terms of Pell, given so many changes that are going on at the federal level. So that's just one. And then the other question is more of a, I think you were at last month's meeting when Tracy was, yeah. Have you, and I guess my question is, have you and Tracy talked about actually doing something at NCHEP in particular?
Okay, so I'll take that last question first. Tracy and I have a meeting on the calendar before NCHEP. So that's something I'll make note of that maybe we can plan for. I don't know if there's space in the agenda to try to squeeze something like that in, but
Well, I
happy
have an idea, but I haven't spoken to Judith about this, but I do think that bringing you and Tracy, and if there's someone else who's doing kind of the same kind of work, if you will, in another state, and I know there are people who are, I think it would be really, really important for folks to kind of hear what is happening, because there are a lot of fantastic parallels, but you can all, and then people can actually start kind of asking questions that might really help them take the next steps in their state, because both you and Tracy have been really helpful in terms of, you know, sharing information and websites and data and bills and everything. So just wanted to put it out there that, you know, maybe it could be a UHE sponsored thing. I'm just looking at Judith. So I'm just, again, we haven't spoken, so I don't mean to put Judith on the spot. So anyway, but then the Pell piece. So I'll be quiet now.
Well, just real quick before you answer that, just to let you guys know, and this is something I was going to talk about later on, but we had a meeting recently and we came together and we're thinking that a lot of the work now needs to be focused at the state level. And so we're tapping into, we're going to be reaching out to start creating like a Congress, Unlock Higher Education Congress group, where all 50 states will be identified in the work that is being done, so we can come together in a community and again put the best practices forward. And a lot of people have roadmaps already that we can follow through. So and we'll have more about that when we send out the emails, but just keep in mind that we're trying to create this whole unification of all the work that is being done at the state level.
Can I add to that, Judith? So the collaboration and focusing on the state effort, we realize is really the best way that we can help during this time when all of our federal policies are very much up in the air. And, you know, Ashton, I'm going to be curious to your answer on the Pell Grant, but I don't think any of us have that answer. But what we do know is we've had some successes and some implementations. And so by focusing on this Congress, our plan is to make sure, at least from the UHE level, we are collaborating and having representatives from all these states to highlight those successes and to have a year in 2025 of gratitude for the things that have been accomplished. Like Ashton said, plan for those wins. We've had some wins, and even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it, we want to be emphasizing that and being thankful for the support we've had so far. But we want to be really good at highlighting all the successes each of you have had in your organizations, and we can help be that voice. So we decided we will be keeping the national and state collaboration together because obviously this year especially, the work is very unified. And so, yeah, more on that later, but we'll be meeting this week, Elizabeth and a few others and I, to kind of start setting up what that would look like. And then each of you should start thinking about representing your state because, you know, we're going to ask you. That's all.
Thank you both. I know we want to have time for subcommittee updates and we are quickly running out of meeting time. So I'll be really quick on the last 2 points, but I'm wherever you need me to be at NCHEP and otherwise. As far as Pell goes, there has not been a great effort in Illinois to leverage Pell, whether that's in relation to Second Chance Pell or Pell as it exists now. We've had very few programs that have tapped into that funding stream, whether some of that is by choice and some of that is because their programs don't align with some of the requirements that Pell has in place. It's one of the primary motivations for opening up state aid because state aid would be available to a lot of programs that Pell might not be. And because the uptake has been so slow and rocky, we don't have any, well, we have one approved PEP at this point that operates in a federal facility, but otherwise it's been an uphill battle as it has for many. And with the sort of uncertainty in the world these days, I think we're feeling more than ever like we need to focus internally at our state and how we can shore up resources that might become less available at the federal level. The other thing I want to note just quickly is the task force had such a limited time, partially because of the timeline set out in the legislation, but also because it took a long time for the necessary appointments to be made. The legislation spelled out a certain composition for the task force, and it took a lot of external pressure on the governor and others that were responsible for making the necessary appointments, and that delayed the start of the task force by a while. So if you're looking at a potential task force in your state, it's worth it to have in mind recommendations and ways to make those recommendations to the necessary stakeholders well in advance of passing that law and getting that task force up and running. Judith, thank you so much. I hope we didn't take too much of the time.
No, that's fine. And actually, we did some of the updates from the state and federal subcommittee anyways, so it really worked out fine. I'm excited to to learn even more about the work that you guys are doing. You guys have been doing a phenomenal work for quite some time now, and I'm excited to see that it's really producing some good results. And also, the work that all of you guys have been doing out there. So this is, again, it's a space for collaboration. We don't want to work in silos. We don't want to repeat the wheel. We want to learn from the best practices and bring them to, bring them forward, bring them together. And if people have the roadmap for that to make it easier on us, it's already hard work as it is. So we definitely want to come together. And I think, and I truly believe that there's power in numbers. So the more that we have in support and the more states that are, following suit in this type of work, the better that those that have been a little bit reluctant will be able to join us. And things are shifting, as CC mentioned, the focus may not be now at federal because of everything that's happening. So it may be a great opportunity for the state level. And from what I'm hearing is a lot of people that were not at the table before are coming forth now and try to support this type of work. And with that, I'll bring it to our subcommittees. I think, you know, again, this is part of what we're headed to. I don't know if anybody else from the subcommittee team has anything else to add. I do want to point out that we do have a new chair member, and that's Elizabeth. So welcome, Elizabeth. Again, we're always looking for chairs to really hold on this type of work and get it together and moving it forward. So if you're considering joining one of our chairs, please reach out to me, reach out to Mickey. He'll put the emails on the email on there on the chat for you guys to join. This is hard work. It's consistent work, and I appreciate all the resiliency that you guys put forward to get this work done. But it's such a satisfaction when we get those wins, right? Even the small wins, because we know how hard they are to get. Anything else before I go into the announcements? Anything else from the chairs that they want to add?
I would like to give Elizabeth a chance to introduce and see if she has any words.
Yes.
Already ended up on the screen like that.
Yes.
You're always putting me on the spot. We're eventually going to have words about this. I'm Elizabeth. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I look forward to getting to know all of you. I am excited to be the new chair of the federal committee, though I am excited that we're staying with the state committee and moving forward to develop this idea of Congress. Some of the things that we talked about earlier this week was that the power of storytelling and the power of the education in prison seems to be the one aspect of policy that is a bipartisan issue, and it may remain so. Something that I have seen in my personal work at JSTOR is that it's actually red states that are pushing the initiative further right now, which is an interesting dichotomy in line of the chaos that's ensuing. Of course, their motivation is economic, it's not humanistic, but the mode doesn't really matter as long as the goal is achieved, right? And so I think that we can agree that going state by state and tailoring that messaging so that we still reach the same outcomes can shore up us on a state level, so that way, no matter what happens on the federal level, that we are safeguarded state by state to protect the education successes that we have had in our individual states, and then also showcase to these other states that have not historically been on board with education that there is working models already available as these more red states are coming online and wanting to know more and wanting to implement these programs, whether it's for economic gain or it's for humanistic possibilities. So that's where we are, and we'll have more to explain about that. I am excited to be part of this community and to be able to accept this role officially. So thank you for having me, and we will let you know more shortly when I'm back in the States.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
You have something, Beth?
Yeah, so I just wanted to quickly, because I'm going to have to get off here in 2 minutes, and I just wanted to say 2 things. The first is welcome to new members who showed up today. Specifically, I'm going to call them out, call out Chrissy and Mel. We had a lovely little breakout room, and it was, I loved meeting both of you and hope to continue some additional conversations. I am the current co-chair of the Membership and Fundraising Committee for Unlock Higher Education. We are always happy to invite everybody all the time. So if you're talking to other people, if you think there's someone that we should reach out to because you've had an interesting conversation and you think, oh, this person might really appreciate some of the work that we're doing, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, myself included. And also, I just wanted to say thank you to Ashton. Great presentation. Love the work that's going on. kudos, and I have some ideas, but I will not share them now.
Great, thank you for that. I want to remind you guys that NCHEP is coming along. New Orleans, I know that they are sold out, but if you are going to be there, please reach out to us. We are going to be having a workshop done, and we really want to include all the voices. The title is Coalition Building, and I think that opens it up to all the members because you are part of our building blocks. So if you're going to be there, please let us know so that we can include you in that conversation. There's also going to be Palm Beach County Reentry Summit for those who are maybe in this side of the land. And I recommend it. It is one of the best conferences in Florida as it is when it comes to reentry. And so, you know, if you're going to be in town or you're going to be anywhere near, I urge you to participate in that one. That is June 4th. And of course, JFF Horizon Conference coming up as well. So hope to see you guys in some of these conferences. If you want to discuss your work, if you want to consider being a guest speaker in our future meetings, please reach out to us. And if you have information that you want us to share for our membership, also please let us know and we'll be happy to do so. Again, this is a space of collaboration. We're all leaders in this space. And so to me, leadership comes with the collaboration level that we have been able to achieve in this coalition. With that, thank you guys for joining us and have a great rest of the week. Be safe